Hi, I'm Chua, Principal and Founder at AvidThink, a research and analysis company. Thank you for joining us today at Layer 123 World Congress 2020 virtual conference. It's been a long journey since the arrival of SDN and NFV about 10 years ago, and I'd like to share my thoughts about transforming the network in 2020. I'll touch on what expectations were, or at least what my expectations were, and what the reality was and is. Like you, we at AvidThink were looking forward to 2020. We were expecting the proliferation of mobility, 5G, faster connections, a more agile and mobile workforce. We were eagerly awaiting emergent use cases, as well as seeing the development of AR, VR, industrial IoT, private LTE, 5G. I know some of us were expecting to meet at MWC in Barcelona. Instead, we were hit with COVID-19. The world stood still, frozen in fear. Businesses shut down. Venues were left empty, and many of our friends, families, colleagues were impacted by furloughs, layoffs, or even the virus itself. Our hearts go out to those affected. We, as part of the global telecommunications community, played a pivotal role during the pandemic. As workers migrated to work from home, students signed into online classes, we collectively stepped up. The essential workers at telcos around the world kept networks up as traffic spiked. 40, 50, 70%, we kept it up. The world came to realize the importance of what we do in networking. We power critical communications, enabling the economy to continue to function. We connect loved ones across vast distances. We keep students educated and people sane and entertained through online performances. The world today recognizes that networking is a critical function. Speaking of networking, let's take a look at some significant networking initiatives as we enter 2020 and see how we fared on those to date. On the cloud end, we were working on multi-cloud networking across hyperscale clouds, the ongoing topic of cloud carrier cooperation, including running network functions in public clouds, and cooperating on edge computing initiatives. And within the data center, we pursued programmable networks, and we still do, disaggregation and white box networking, as well as intent-based networking and SDN, as well as the use of hardware acceleration and smart NICs. In the mobile core and transport arena, many carriers embarked on the evolution from 5G non-standalone NSA to 5G standalone SA. We looked at the disaggregated core and contemplated where we might place the various functions, the UPS, right, and more. NFV continues to be an ongoing thread from the mobile core to the RAN to the edge. And on the transport side, I guess we'll never tire of more bandwidth. And so the expectation was that we're going to keep lighting up fiber at higher speeds, right? 400, 600, 800. The ongoing innovation on that is still pushing ahead. Now, the RAN was a hotbed of activity entering 2020. It's grown even more. Opening up the RAN, virtualizing it, disaggregating it, even opening up the radio controls via the RAN Intelligent Controller, or RIC. Reminds me of SDN in the early days, though. I think we're wiser this time, hopefully. As well, network slicing, certainly a hot term coming in 2020. It's been a hot term for some time now. Speaking of hot, we come now to the white hot edge market, right? Edge computing, which purportedly will overshadow the cloud market in terms of its reach and scale. I believe a large amount of data will be generated and processed at the edge. And there are going to be novel new use cases, but I, for one, am not quite ready to jump on the edge will be 75% of all workloads by 2025 bandwagon yet. Economies of scale matter and orchestration has cost. That said, networking at the edge will be important. Running 5G UPF to reduce latency in edge locations, whether telco owned or, God forbid, hyperscaler owned edge, needs to happen. The virtualized RAN will need the edge. In the enterprise, SD-WAN and SASE were high on the expectations list coming to 2020. UCP was a hot topic as well, as was the use of 4G LTE and 5G technologies inside private enterprise networks to supplement Wi-Fi and supplant industrial Ethernet. And across all domains, There was expectations of ongoing innovation in orchestration and automation to tie it all together. Now, before we take a look at how these initiatives fared, I just want to make an observation. I pulled a couple of slides from the 2019 World Congress last year, where I laid out the SD and NFV journeys. This leads to our deja vu moment for this year's Layer 123 Congress. Look at the initiatives on the slides. They've been around for some time, some we've made progress on, others not so much. And I realize it's frustrating, leading to feelings of presque vu, that we're so close. We're on the verge of NFV. We're on the verge of cloud native. This is the year of intent-based networking, or maybe not. The reality is that some of these things will take time to mature, and that some of these things may not be. Right? All right, moving on to our informal little map of expectations versus realized outcome for the top networking initiatives. Up from caveat. This is our perspective, perhaps ill-informed, but we've tried to take into account the work that we do with our advisory clients, from the world's largest telcos to leading global network equipment providers to Global 2000 enterprises. These are the people that we talk and work with. The way this is laid out, and no, Marie Kondo has not worked her magic on it, so it's a little messy, kind of like a world of networking is. This is laid out where expectations go from high on the left to low on the right, while the realized outcomes go from low at the bottom to high on top. So the top right quadrant are the initiatives that we had low expectations of coming into 2020, but which pleasantly surprised us by having good outcomes. These are the joy sparkers. Below that quadrant are those we had low expectations of and which had little realized outcomes to date. So no surprises, hence the name. On the top left are those we had high expectations for and which performed to expectations. These are our expectation meters. And on the bottom left are the initiatives which we had higher hopes for, but which underperform. We urge these try-againers to try again in 2021. Given the time constraints, I'll just highlight a couple to explain our thinking. And by the way, the size of the circle you see there is meant to indicate the impact that the initiatives were expected to have. Now, certainly a subjective measure, but we thought it added more visual interest to this eye chart. That and the use of colors, like green, for instance, for 5G monetization. Though, 5G monetization is clearly a work in progress. All right, I'm going to call your attention to the SD-WAN and SASE orange circle on the top left. SD-WAN was running red hot, or white hot, you pick your favorite color, coming into 2020. And despite COVID-19, or perhaps because of COVID-19, that category continues to thrive. The push into work from home drove SD-WAN vendors without a software or mobile agent to quickly scramble to deliver one. And I would say SD-WAN and SASE have done really well. Next, I'll direct you to the little cyan circle next to it called disaggregated networking. I'm trying hard not to play a Where's Wally game here, so hopefully you can find these little spots in there. Many promising entrants, certainly in that space as we enter 2020, right? But one recently stood out when AT&T announced that DriveNet software was used in their backbone, right, in production, along with OCP white box hardware. Let's move to the right of that a little bit. 5G build out. That's continued despite the pandemic. 5G networks across the globe, right, everywhere, especially in the US and Asia, China, rapidly expanding, often egged along by national and corporate pride and less consumer or business demand. Well, right next to that is Open RAN, it's in purple, right? Using the term to cover all aspects, right, including the work done by the ORAN Alliance, using that to cover things like virtualization, disaggregation, standard interfaces work being done by multiple groups. I've been impressed with innovation on that front. And certainly Rakuten's ongoing breakneck speed rollout of the greenfield and cloud-native RAN in Japan has garnered significant attention. Other major carriers, equipment providers, and even the US government are jumping on this Open RAN thing. Collaboration between multiple parties, the ORAN Alliance that I just mentioned, TIP, OCP, ONF, Linux Foundation, GSMA, and especially the CNTT part of that, also promising. Open RAN is not a magical solution though to win customers. Rakuten is still working hard to recruit new subscribers, but it can save significant CapEx and OpEx costs. In the 30 to 40% range is what early numbers are indicating. That's pretty significant. Now, cast your eyes to the purple circle top right. private LTE 5G. Nokia is claiming over 180 deployments worldwide. Ericsson, Huawei aggressively pushing deployments as well. LTE 5G technologies promise improved performance, better spectrum management, superior quality of experience, and potentially better isolation than Wi-Fi. And so we're seeing supplementing of Wi-Fi in industrial rollouts and supplanting industrial and wide Ethernet. Clearly, enterprises are buying in. So that was quite surprising and great. Now, let's touch on two related topics. The Edge and the Mac on the extreme left, right? That's been Edge touted as a cloud killer. I don't think the Beanstalk got the memo though. The Edge is actually really just part of distributed cloud, right? The other topic, therefore, is the red circle on the top right quadrant, the hyperscaler telco cooperation. I have to say, I had low expectations of seeing progress this year between the two classes of competitors or collaborators. There's an issue of trust between them, right? It wasn't clear that Azure buying a firm in Metaswitch helped allay carrier fears. However, AWS Wavelength with Verizon did go into production. It's up to 5 zones now, with 10 zones slated by the end of 2020. The carriers and cloud providers have come to the realization they need to partner. The world is moving to a mobile-first infrastructure, and cloud providers have limited appetite to take on building the infrastructure. Plus, hyperscalers and MNOs both benefit by enabling low latency access from all mobile subscribers into the clouds, right? So the apps provide the users with good experiences. Everyone wins in that situation. On the other side, carriers are realizing they have limited relationships with the developers, the people actually building the edge-based applications. So they need hyperscale partners. In any case, there's been progress on multiple fronts. Azure for Operators, for instance, and Google's GMAC initiative and the Anthos work. And also Telefonica recently indicating they will run their 5G core aided by Ericsson on AWS infrastructure. Well, at least for private networks to start out. Now, on the Edge and Mac front, unfortunately, early monetizable use cases are still rare. The CDN use cases, in my view, is a grandfathered in non-novel use case. Netflix and YouTube already had Edge presence in these MNOs before. However, adding intelligence to that CDN for ad serving, gaming, VR, AR could provide new value. And also enterprises are realizing that many of today's applications don't need that ultra low latency. And many of those that need that low latency are often in regulated industries, like use cases for edge-managed autonomous vehicles, remote surgery, right? They'll take longer to get approval. Now, I'm confident that there are new use cases like next-gen collaboration to be found, for instance, across multiple verticals, right? For the edge, like media and entertainment, automotive, healthcare. We just need to put in the work to get there. Now, as we come to the end of the presentation, I'll take a minute or two to cover our look-aheads. I see SD-WAN, SASE, 5G, SA build out, and Open RAN continuing their momentum into 2021. On Edge and Mac, plenty of POCs. Monetization models might take a little while longer. And both cloud hyperscalers and telcos will have to collaborate and compete as they figure out each other's roles. Now, on the topic of NFV and telco cloud, there's work needed to figure out how these PNF, physical network functions, VNFs, CNFs coexist, and how to appropriately utilize different clouds with different workloads. And there's going to be more cross-pollination between public clouds and carriers. Likewise, orchestrating across telco cloud, hyperscale public clouds, and the edge will keep the CTOs and many network operators up at night. Automation will continue to play a key role in telco networks. This is one initiative that will likely never go away, especially as we now get into AI and ML and AI ops. I see disaggregation also getting momentum now that there are proof points beyond data center switching. And along with that, the ongoing software architecture across all these telco applications and components has to happen to get to a cloud native framework. Now, going to CNF is not a lift and shift. It's not like taking a PNF and making it a VNF, right? Which takes work. This is worse. This is a lot more work. It's a refactor of the software. It's a non-trivial task. And finally, I want to touch on a topic that's probably the most important. I think we collectively are going to be stuck in this deja vu, presque vu situation year after year if we don't change the telco culture. Tarak Amin, the CTO of Rakuten Mobile, in an analyst roundtable recently, shared that the only thing that keeps him up at night is a worry that he can't maintain the culture as Rakuten Mobile expands. Right? That cloud DNA was a key to the engineering success to date. And for me, having experience across the cloud, enterprise, telco cultures, I have to say I wholeheartedly agree with him. We need that change. In wrapping up, if you have questions or comments, email us at research@avidthink.com. And I hope you've enjoyed this one-way conversation. I certainly have. And with that, ladies and gentlefolk, I take my leave of you and hand you off to my betters. Thank you.